Pew pew.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the J Situation. Today we're going to look at a pretty unique product. This is the Pulsar FXQ50 thermal monocular / clip-on. So a very unique product in that you can use it as a handheld spotting monocular, and then you can remove the eyepiece assembly and then attach it to an adapter, which then in turn attaches to a day scope. So you can turn a day scope into a thermal optic and vice versa. So a little bit about the technical specifications regarding this unit. It has a 17 micron pixel pitch thermal sensor from Pulsar. The resolution is 384 pixels by 288. The screen resolution, that is the screen that you'll be viewing through the ocular lens, is 640 by 480. So it's a very crisp, clear screen, but keep in mind that the sensor is 384. So it doesn't quite have as many pixels as a 640 unit, but it does have the 50 Hertz refresh rate, so that is kind of a bonus. Again, it's a monocular and a clip-on. This particular unit is IPX5 or IPX7 water resistant, depending if you're using it in monocular mode or in clip-on mode. Note that it is not a dedicated weapon sight. In other words, it does not have built-in crosshairs that you can use when mounting it on a weapon as a standalone device. You do use the crosshairs of your day scope, looking through the day scope, superimposing those crosshairs on the screen of this unit. It does have two different power options, and it does come with everything you need for that, is at least the adapters. So the kind of base option here, see this cover? This is the battery cover lid. It does have a coin slot to turn if it gets hard, but you can do it by your finger. It kind of comes out like that. You can see when I turned that, what happened, right? These two little tabs were pressed in. And then you have two CR123 battery slots right there. But it also comes with this little guy, and he's pretty cool. So you can, just where you're going to put your CR123s, if you don't want to use those, you can pop this bad boy in like so until it clicks, and then you can put your little door cover that's swinging into there, so it's up out of the way, and when you turn the unit over, you now have two different female power receptacles through which you can power your device with external battery power of your choosing. So what I did, I don't really like using disposable batteries on things like this because I kind of have a habit of leaving them on, and even if I didn't, I kind of want to have a set it and forget it type of solution. So I went on Amazon and I bought this little Anchor Power Bank. The specs on it are 6,700 milliamp hours of capacity, and it was like $20, right? So it's crazy, right? It's probably just some lithium power cells inside a plastic housing, and then you have a fancy button here you can press and determine the power level, and then you got your input to charge it, which is micro USB, and then you have your output, which is a regular USB connector right there. So this is super lightweight and super small, and if you wanted to just use this thing as a binocular, you could even put this on the side and zip tie it. You could keep this in your shirt pocket and have the cable come out, whatever you want. So it's definitely a good option. It's cheap. You can buy Pulsar's battery too. I'm sure they have one, but this was only $20, and you can use it for all kinds of stuff. You can charge your phone or whatever. One little idiosyncrasy when using external power on the core unit, the battery level indicator that you see on the screen is no longer going to be accurate with regard to the power level of your power bank. So this power bank has kind of a series of 4 LEDs, and when you press a button it'll tell you that level. So just keep that in mind. I should say that in the field I hunted with this thing all night, and I left it on all night, and I didn't run out. So 6,700 milliamp hours is apparently more than enough for a whole night. So also included in the box, you get this remote. So some Pulsar products come with remotes. With this product, you're gonna want to use this because, as you can imagine, you use this thing as a clip-on. You're putting it on the front of your objective lens of your day scope. It's going to be kind of a long reach for you to adjust the parameters on the buttons on the top. At least that's what I found. So I would urge you to explore the use of this remote. On the bottom of the unit, you do have a female receptacles for a mount. Again, this can't be used as a standalone weapon sight, but you do have the option of mounting it to a rail nonetheless. And what Pulsar has done is they've included this lanyard, and interestingly enough, you have this male attachment on the lanyard, so I guess that's pretty cool. And then you get a lens cloth and your manual and all that good stuff. So again, there's the unit. There are actually two in this line. So this is the FXQ50. There's also an FXQ38. So the only difference between those two units is the size of the objective lens and the focal length of the objective lens, and therefore the difference would be your thermal signature detection range and the native magnification level. I believe the native magnification in monocular mode for the 38 is 3.1x, and for this one it's 4.1. So let's continue to look at the monocular mode of this device. I've placed the core FXQ50 next to my Helion XP50 just to give you kind of a rough size comparison. You can see, let's see, do it like that. So you got the core, and you have the Helion, or Helion, or however you pronounce it, because I'm going to mess it up no matter what. So that's the top, that's the right side, left side, and keep in mind I do have the external power adapter plugged in to the core unit. And then you have the bottom. So note that on the bottom of these two units, on the Helion, you have your quarter 20 female tripod adapter, and then on the core you kind of have two of them, but they also interface with the Pulsar mounts. So you can use your imagination. So like the Helion, you have a lens cap. It's very similar, kind of the same lens cap assembly. It's kind of dirty. I kind of just got back from using this in the field for a couple nights. Haven't cleaned it yet. So like the Helion, these caps are rotatable, and they do fold all the way back to kind of get out of your way. Also, like the Helion models, you do have a focus, which is super important for a monocular. I mean, they're super important for scopes too, for your weapon. For a thermal, I think, I really like to get the most clarity, but man, for a monocular, when you're just looking around, you gotta have it, and that's super important. So I really like that. It's pretty cool. The controls are very simple because you do not have onboard recording on this guy, and there's no recording output either, so you're not going to be recording anything. So you get a power button, and then these side buttons, they control brightness and contrast, stuff like that, both of the image you see and the menu that you see on the screen. And this rear button does a couple things too. I think if you hold it down, it does something. I can't recall off the top of my head, but you can control zoom. I think you have like a double zoom you can do in monocular mode. That'll bring you up to a double zoom with a native 4.1 mag. Also, it'll bring you to some menu options for adjusting the scope and calibrating, things like that. On the, I guess kind of moving aft on the device, you have your eyepiece assembly. So like the Helion, you got a diopter. So that's pretty cool, right? That's the thing that focuses your eye's view of the screen that you're looking at. It has this eye cup that's rotatable, similar to Pulsar stuff, right? And then when you store it, you can kind of flip it down, it gets out of the way. Super cool. One thing that is different in the core line, because it's a dual-use device, this entire eyepiece assembly can be removed. Okay, so check this out. You got this these knobs right here. You're gonna rotate it counterclockwise like that, and then you're gonna kind of rock it a little bit, pull it off, and then you have the screen of the device, and then you have your complete ocular lens assembly that you look through to see the screen on the device in your hand. And so check this out. So when you do that, you're like, oh my god, it's exposed. We're exposed. So to protect it, you're gonna put this little rubber dealie that they include on there, and you can then throw that in your bag and press easy that it is protected. And then when you want to use it as a clip-on later on your super sweet gun with your super sweet day scope, you're gonna take this thing, this adapter that you get and you buy, and you are going to install it. If I can do this right. There we go. You can do that right. You're gonna put so the clip thing is on the starboard right side, and then you're gonna make sure to rotate it so it's locked on. And then in a moment, later in this video, I will show you how to install this on the day scope. So to remove this guy and to install the eyepiece again, you're going to again rotate that counterclockwise, take it off, get your eyepiece assembly, remove your little protective cap, put your protective cap in your other guy. And the other guy actually has another protective cap to the other side, right? Because you got two lenses. So now that's all buttoned up. Super cool. Set that aside. You got your ocular lens assembly. Compress it on there, clockwise turn, and that's locked in place. And you're good in monocular mode once again. You can tell this is a Pulsar unit as soon as you pick it up. In my opinion, the Pulsar devices have some of the most robust construction of a lot of the brands. You know, there's a variety of construction types used on different thermal brands. I do like Pulsar's construction. I like the way that it's not too slick. You can definitely feel the quality in your hands. You don't feel like you're going to break it when you drop it, and that's something I really like. It is a bit more compact than the Helion, but keep in mind if you use this external battery pack, if you do keep it on the device, that's going to add a little bit of bulk. That's kind of up to you. That's personal preference. People can kind of figure it out nowadays as far as power options. Just knowing you have those extra jacks to power the device is kind of cool. The detection range for the core is going to be less than the Helion because the resolution of the sensor is less. So you're going to get less detail, but I should say that the detail that I got out of this is definitely usable, and target identification is satisfactory for hunting. I had no problems identifying animals within 100 yards, which in my opinion is pretty good night hunting target range for many hunters. there are some people that need to engage targets at night at longer distances. A lot of places where I hunt at night, I'm kind of limited due to terrain and also the lack of peripheral vision. Hunting at night is really overlooked by some folks that haven't done it, so just keep that in mind. So anyway, again, that's kind of an individual thing, but again, when I hunted with it within 100 yards, 200 yards or so, depending, I had pretty good luck identifying stuff. And you can bump up the native magnification on this to a 2x digital zoom. Again, that's going to have the resolution of your effective sensor resolution. But again, you can do it, and I think, come to think of it, I think if you hold the right button down. So that's another function to think about. It doesn't have the continuous zoom level that the Helium does, nor does it have the graduated zoom functions. It's just kind of that 2x or the native 4.1 in monocular mode. In the clip-on mode, which I'll show you in a moment, you don't want to zoom with a monocular, and it kind of doesn't really let you do that. You want to zoom with your objective of your day scope, so you're going to change your magnification on your day scope, and there are some limitations to how much you want to zoom in, because you will be zooming in on the screen you're viewing through your day scope, not with the device itself. So it's an optical zoom, but it's an optical zoom on a digital screen. Attachment of the core device for use as a clip-on in front of your day scope is fairly involved, but it's not as complicated as it may seem. So the attachment requires you to purchase several different cover ring adapters depending on which external outer objective diameter you have on your day scope. So on this day scope, this is a 50 millimeter objective on this Weaver Tactical, but however, that's not the number you need to go into when you're looking for the exact shim to use on this adapter ring. There are instructions in the manual in which you need to measure your outer diameter and then pick the closest diameter shim. For example, I have one here. Here's an example. This one, if you can see in the camera here, it says 58. That's a 58 millimeter diameter. All the measurements are in millimeters for these adapters. What you'll do is you'll put that shim in between the day scope objective exterior housing and the cover ring adapter you see here. So the way I did that was I picked one that let me get a snug fit after realizing that I didn't have the perfect the perfect size from Pulsar, but I made one work. I don't recall the exact diameter I used, but you can figure that out fairly easily using the manual, which you can download, and measuring the objective bill of your day scope. The way I installed this was I did clamp it down with a throw lever, and then this screw here, that's a hex key screw. I torqued that down with a fat wrench to the torque spec in the manual, and then there is a locking screw to ensure that doesn't come out, and that's in here, in there. So I found that to be involved, but definitely doable, not too complicated. You just need to make sure through some trial and error when you do so that you are aligned with the horizontal reticle of your day scope to the horizontal temporary alignment reticle in the core unit, so that you don't have any kind of pitch errors with your calibration later. So once your adapter is on your objective lens of your day scope, you can kind of leave it on there. Assuming you're going to marry the core unit to a certain firearm and scope, you want to be able to remove it and then reattach it when you want to use it, right? So you can definitely do that. You can leave this on, and because in doing so you're kind of forgoing your lens cap, right? So I used to have this flip up lens cap on my objective lens. It's similar to what I have on the ocular lens for this scope. Couldn't use that anymore, obviously, so what the Pulsar includes with this covering adapter is a Pulsar lens cover. So it does have a flip up function, so it's spring loaded, right? But the cool thing is it has the cam lock grooves. So what you can do is put it in there and twist, and then it's on there. Then you have your typical flip top cover for your lens cap. So you're good to go on that. So you have your monocular mode for the core. And then if you want to use it as a clip-on, what you're going to need to do is remove the ocular lens assembly. It's pretty simple. You have this cam lock here with the 4 different nubs. You're going to rotate that counterclockwise, and then you're going to work it loose. Okay, so when you do that, you now have your complete ocular lens assembly separated. You do have now an exposed lens on this side, and Pulsar has included on the clip-on adapter this little cover here, so you can take that off of there, place that in there, and then you kind of protect that lens. Okay, you can set that aside. You can put it in your buttstock pouch, your backpack, or your pocket, or whatever you have around when you're in the field. So this is the adapter for the clip-on mode. You can see it shares the same kind of nubs and interlocks. And then you have the covering side that your objective lens of your scope looks through. Okay, so here you can see the little screen that you'll be looking at through your objective lens of your day scope into the core. So you're going to take this on its its starboard side here. You're going to have your locking mechanism for the adapter on the gun. Work that on, and then lock it down. Takes a couple times doing it to practice. So you might want to practice that before you get out on the field. So that's pretty solid, right? And then what you're going to do, you see these kind of cam slots right there. You're going to line that with the pins that are inside the covering adapter housing, and then you're going to twist it clockwise until it locks in place. See that little lever that locked in there? And it's similar to remove it. You're going to pull on that, then rotate it back the other way. So then it is locked on, and you are ready to perform your calibration on the scope. So here's the device in clip-on mode. This mode is pretty cool. I've attached the core unit to my Weaver Tactical 3 to 15 X day scope. This is on my Savage precision carbine bolt action. It's chambered in 308 Winchester. So this Weaver scope is first focal plane scope. So when I zoom with the day scope magnification, my reticle, being a mil-dot reticle, the subtensions change size to be true to size with the zoom level, so I can kind of range and count mil-dot fractions at whatever I'm looking at. And so I use that again to vary the power with the day scope, and that reticle is superimposed on the thermal optic. The view through the thermal optic was clear at the lowest 3x magnification. I bumped it up to around 6x max, and I could still make out objects fairly clearly through the thermal. I think 3 to 4x magnification on your day scope is the sweet spot for using the core unit. So let me kind of go over this setup really quick. Before I talk about the attachment, I just wanted to talk about the general overview. So here I have the external battery pack power module installed in lieu of the CR123 battery cover. Okay, and what I've done is I've connected the included Pulsar micro USB cable, and I took some home theater cable wraps, it's just some stuff I had lying around to secure the USB cable to my dayscope. And then moving aft on the rifle, I kind of have this cheek pad / ammo pouch that I've always used on this hunting rig, and inside I placed this power adapter. It's a USB power bank. It is an Anchor unit. It's 6,700 milliamp hours. I bought it from Amazon for about $20. It's really small, really lightweight, and with this battery pack in the pouch, I went ahead and I left the core unit on all night, and I didn't have to worry about the battery running all the way down. So that was definitely pleasing. So you can see here you have access to the core unit on front of the dayscope. One thing you do need to keep in mind is that it's a little further forward than than you're used to adjusting the turrets on your dayscope. So if you're used to adjusting optics during the day back here, you need to keep in mind that at nighttime or during the daytime when you're using the thermal, you're going to have to be reaching almost a foot further to control this on the controls on top of the core unit. There is an alternative to that. The core unit includes a remote. There is some included Velcro or hook and loop closure and adhesive backed strips that you can use to attach this remote, somewhere further aft on your rifle. Perhaps you want to, install it right here, or maybe in the pouch, or that's up to personal preference. But at first, before my field test, I didn't really think I would use the remote, as this unit doesn't offer any recording. However, after using it and after noticing some of the idiosyncrasies with the sight and the setup that I used on this bolt action, next time I use it, I'm definitely taking this remote out with me, and I might even zip tie it or use the included adhesive to fix it somewhere aft on the rifle that's closer to me. So here's where the setup gets a little tricky. It's a bit involved, but again, it's definitely doable. So the first time you hook up the core to your dayscope, you're going to need to go into the menu of the core unit, and you're going to display a temporary crosshair, and you need to get the pitch of the core unit, that is the rotation clockwise and counterclockwise. You need to get that aligned with the reticle that you're using in your dayscope. After that, your horizontal line in your on the cord calibration crosshair is aligned with the horizontal line in your dayscope reticle. You are good to go as far as you are now ready to sight in the device. You have to sight in the device. You can't just do the horizontal alignment and then go out in the field and hope to hit anything. Unfortunately, you can't do that. So there's variance in geometry based on the electronics alignment in the core unit with the core housing relative to the exterior mounting ring on your dayscope. So this apparatus has a different, slightly different geometry. It's not going to be perfect, and it's going to be different for every scope. So you're going to have to zero the core unit just like you would any other thermal weapon sight. It's important to note that this only has to be done once for one cover ring adapter installation configuration, as long as nothing changes. And once you do it, you can twist and remove the core and reattach it as you like to change it from a clip-on to a monocular device. So the zeroing function of this core here, as I move my rifle, my gigantic rifle on the bench, it requires you to take a shot through the gun, through the thermal, and then what you're going to do is you're going to hold down two buttons in succession, and that's going to enter the calibration menu for the unit. Then what you're going to do is you're going to tell the core where on the thermal display the center of your dayscope reticle is aligned. Okay, so there's a little, horizontal and vertical jog, commands where you'll be able to walk through the X and the Y coordinate to tell the core, okay, this is where my my center of reticle is that I used to aim, and you're going to tell that's what you're going to tell the core on that menu, and then it's going to prompt you to say, okay, well, given that initial position of your reticle, where did you actually hit? So what you're going to want to do is, with the aim point aligned, therefore with the center of the dayscope crosshairs aligned where you aimed on the target, you're going to walk in the menu in the calibration system the coordinate. You're going to walk to the coordinate of your point of impact. So I did figure out some of a somewhat convenient factor regarding that process. It does seem daunting, but it's really not that hard, because if, let's say, like I was sighting this gun in at 100 yards, right? And so I had placed a bunch of targets kind of in a square configuration on my target stand 100 yards away, and I had little squares on my target, and each square was an inch. Okay, so an inch at 100 yards, that's about a minute of angle or so. So it turns out that each click of windage or elevation in the system seems to be about an inch at 100 yards. Because I think, if I recall correctly, when I first placed this on there, I shot dead center, or at least I aimed dead center, and then my shot was about 6 inches right and like 1 inch high, or something like that. And so what I did was I had to walk that cursor 6 inches right and 1 inch high, or 6 clicks right and 1 click high, and then I reshot again once that calibration setting was saved in the unit, and it'll give you a little okay to indicate that, and then it was dead on. So it's just like you're sighting in some of these other thermal optics that are standalone. Unfortunately, if only it were as easy as clipping this on and aligning your dayscope reticle to this reticle, that would be pretty sweet. But alas, the technology is not included in the scope, and so due to alignment variance, you're going to have to do this process. But again, you only have to do it once, and then you can remove this and put it back on. You should have a return to zero on your system. So I want to talk for a moment about my field experience using this device. I took this device hunting for 2 full nights at a fairly large ranch area and neighboring ranch. So I did kind of put it through its paces. Didn't end up engaging any hogs. That's just kind of how the night went with the wind and a couple other factors, but I had a lot of fun with it and did view several different animals with it, including deer and varmints and things like that. So I took it out, as I showed you, attached to the objective lens of my dayscope on my 308 bolt action. I use that bolt action for deer. I've done that for many years now. One of the first locations where I took the device was to a deer blind at night. I wanted to get a feel for how this rig would operate in a situation in which I was out hunting deer in a blind. it got dark, and I stuck around to shoot hogs or whatever other vermin came to the feeder I was hunting on. And I would do that by clipping this core unit onto the day scope that was already fielded, and with the day scope that had the adapter that could accept these cam slots here. In my use, I did find that it was definitely adequate to see the feeders, the wildlife, through the day scope. So it was cool. Didn't shoot any hogs, but if I needed to, man, I would have seen them just fine. I could see deer and rabbits and other things within 100 yards just fine. I could see the feeder just fine. I could see the fencing around the protein feeder just fine. So it was great. But now let's move into some of my minor gripes with this thing. Some stuff you need to be aware of if you're gonna buy it. So I hunted the first night with it, and then I went to the shooting range the next day just to kind of get a good double check on the gear. That's something I like to do sometimes. So I went to check 0, and I noticed some things that you need to be aware of. So the covering attachment to the day scope objective end, if done correctly, is very solid and doesn't move. That thing is not moving off my objective lens. It's on there. I did the torque to spec. I used close to the correct shim. That thing is really solid. And so the manual is very good at explaining how to install that. Now, the attachment of this covering adapter to the rifle, to that ring that's on the scope, on the day scope, had some vertical play. So if this is on my rifle, I found that if I press my buttons and I went like that, it's not pivoting here. So between the device and this attachment, I mean, that's rock solid. You really, there's absolutely no play at all. That doesn't move at all. But man, the interface here, it rocked a little bit. It didn't rock side to side. It just rocked up and down, but it only rocked down. I don't know if that's because maybe there's some wear in this thing, because this is a test unit that's been beat up a lot, or what. But I found that it did change to 0, but when I made sure that it was not canted down, and it was lined up like this, just straight, it was fine. So one thing you just got to be careful of, I think, is when you're pressing these buttons up here, don't press them hard. And if you have to for whatever reason, use the remote. The thing is though, it's kind of a bigger issue for me, and this might be a bigger issue for some people too. When I travel on the ranch, I have a double rifle rack on my ATV. And I put my bolt action rifle on. I always put my bolt action rifle on that thing. I've taken it all over the ranch, and the ranch where I hunt, the terrain is very, very rough. It's very rocky. There's a lot of hills. It's not like I'm riding through fields very much. So I found that if I wasn't careful in placing the rifle into my rifle rack properly, this assembly might impinge upon one of the rifle rack mounts, and it would kind of force that up and down. So it's just something to be aware of when you're attaching clip-ons to a day scope. You're gonna have to be just acutely aware of the alignment, because you don't want to get out into your blind and lose that problem, or I'm sorry, lose that 0. But it should be said, this thing can be taken off and on. Okay, so you're going to take this off and put it back on to the scope, and you're going to have it return to 0. But what I'm saying is, just make sure that you have vertical alignment and you don't get too much of a pivot. Okay, so I've placed the device back onto my day scope because I want to show you what I'm talking about. This is super minor. but if you didn't know any better, you might miss it. So I feel like this is pretty important. So check it out. I got my hand on the barrel here. I'm gonna take my thumb and I'm gonna press it down. See that? You see that play? And you let it go, it comes back. But does it come all the way back? No, okay? Let's look at it again. So, you see that? I'm just not 100% sure when I do that if it's 100% solid and aligned. I mean, the difference between this and this is a lot, right? When I let it go, what's the difference between that and that? Maybe not very much, but I tell you what, certainly is enough at 100 yards to make you lose your zero. So that's super important. I don't know if like this covering is kind of worn out. It probably is. This is a test unit, so it's been kind of passed around, as it were. But I do know that when I zero something, I want it in the same configuration I'm shooting with. Super important. So I know this isn't moving. We already established that. I for sure know that this is not moving on this. But as you just saw, I can do this number right there. And you are not seeing this guy move. So what does that mean? That's relative movement between the clip-on and the scope, and that's no bueno. So make sure that when you zero it, there's like no play going that way almost, right? I would just make sure it's like that. And then when you clip this dude on and you're ready to go, right before you stick this thing out of the window of the blind or wherever you're shooting from, just give it a little push just to make sure. It's not a big deal. That's just a little thing. You may not even notice a difference, but I certainly did, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that little thing. I will be talking to Pulsar about this and seeing if maybe there's something that can be done with the snugness or development of this mount here. I hope that's helpful. I will say that based upon my use carrying this thing around on foot and on my ATV all over the period of 2 days and 2 nights, I would say that I would probably, if I'm transporting this on an ATV where it's exposed, it's going to be at the risk of this unit hitting something to have extreme relative movement between the rifle and the day scope and itself. I would disengage. So I would unlock it. I would take this guy. I would put its protective thing on, and I would either put this in my pack and then transport my rifle in the dirt or whatever I'm driving through with my handy dandy objective lens flip up cover on there, and then you know, I would do my hunting you know, with my daytime gun in the daytime, whatever you're going to do. If you want to use this as a monocular, install that, and then when it gets close to dark and you think you want to engage with your weapon with a thermal, install this onto the core and then clip on. And when you clip on, let's do that real quick. May as well. So I'm taking that off. Okay, so I'm clipped on. So when you clip on, just remember, you zero the gun, you're good to go. Don't be doing this number. All right, just make sure you're perfectly aligned, and you should have no problems. After I made that correction, I was fine. But that's the basic process that I would go through when using this in combination with your day rifle. So some closing thoughts. My bottom line is that I always want a spotting device in addition to a weapon sight. Nobody I know, including myself, that hunts at night is going to use only a weapon sight unless they are only hunting from a stationary position, so they can use a tripod mount or a similar rig to pan with their weapon. So, given that a spotting device is a requirement and that this core unit is a decent spotting binocular, that's definitely a positive. If you're looking to save money and not purchase a dedicated weapon sight and a dedicated spotting device as well, and have a good spotter with an okay weapon sight, and you don't need recording capability or other bells and whistles, I think this product should be on your short list. You can compare this to some of the Armasight or FLIR Apollo units. I think the Pulsar unit has a faster refresh rate and more features and a better picture, but the Apollo is another option for what you want to do. All in all, I think it's a really neat product. I prefer a completely separate system myself personally, but I definitely see the attractiveness of a one-product solution. This stuff is not cheap, so cutting your costs in half is definitely attractive. You can run the unit with a cheap $20 battery pack as well, so that's definitely a good feature as well. Thank you for watching this episode of the J Situation. I hope this was a useful and informative video on the Core FXQ50 from Pulsar. If you have any questions about its use, its features, or any of the idiosyncrasies I described regarding the device, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer those for you. Thanks again for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends.
Pew pew.